of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to a Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. Or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper. Write it down so that you're well organized, and when you get in on the show, you take as little time as possible so we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to be always forceful with your point. You can follow us on our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio. Click subscribe on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again for joining us. Your voice in the community, thought that get results. Tonight, Conrad Naya Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and pleasant good evening to your hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio. To my colleague, Mr. Stanley, a pleasant good evening to you, sir, and to everyone in tune to this program by the various means that exist today. Webbo, I'm happy to be here once again. It's another beautiful day here in Nevis, but of course it's been to a certain extent overshadowed by the passing and hence the mourning of the Honorable Franz Amory, and also to a great extent the political storm that have visited our lovely federation, Webbo. But I look forward to a healthy debate on possibly these matters, and I want to say thank you once again for having me, Webbo.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis, those who will be listening to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin. It's an obligation, as I stated so many times before, to be here and to disseminate information regarding the happenings, not only locally, but also regionally and internationally. Therefore, we have an evening of great ordeal, which we would comment on as the evening progresses. Webbo, good evening.
Naya, what we got?
What we got, Webbo, is an environment where, of course, there's quite a lot of exchange in the street, conversation-wise, about the present political climate, actually. There's lots of if and maybe and but about what can take place, what have taken place, and also there are those who are very critical of the various approach that has been taken by the high officials who basically are the partners in this what I consider to be debacle. It's a breakdown before the eyes of the people, which have basically stormed most of our minds, because one couldn't imagine that there was such turmoil and confusion existing for the past many years, really. Now we have seen, and the public is totally shocked, and we have moved to a particular point very fast, and thus one cannot describe it as anything less than a political storm here in the Federation, Webbo. And of course, Webbo, here is Nevis, and we stand pretty much on our own, I would think, from my point of view, as to what would be the outcome of this, even though there are proposed unification with a political party in St. Kitts. I think in the longer run, Nevis still stands and surrounds and is surrounded by great uncertainty going forward politically. So what can we say? There is still a question as to what the Prime Minister is going to do, and of course the consequences that would flow from there. Stanley?
Well, of course, I described it as an ordeal, and it is quite awesome with reference to the players and the ultimate outcome cannot be anticipated, but at the same time it must be debated, and as a result we must come to a conclusion. We have a nation to run, and we, of course, based on the parliamentary system, we elect people to conduct the affairs of the nation and its peoples, and as a result we depend heavily on the decisions they make. As a result, we are of the view that they are competent enough to make decisions in our best interest, but sometimes it reaches to the point where the decisions that are made may not be totally in the people's interest, but in the individual's best interest. And we are hoping that we could find another pathway as we go forward to continue to operate for the people, by the people, and of the people. So where we are at this particular juncture in our overall development and history, we are now faced with an ordeal of most grievous kind, and in this regard we are hoping that the leaders who are currently in Parliament make the decisions again for the betterment of the country and its peoples. Webbo.
You know, Stanley, let's face it sometimes though, and there are times we really got to get real with what's the politicians are offering and what is their duty politically. Country above self is our motto, but sometimes this is not driven by what is better for the country, but what is better for a group of individuals who at times spend a lot of time trying to convince the public that they can be the better choice. I suppose this is what underpins our democratic process and the democracy which we enjoy here and across, the Commonwealth, really. But I think in this particular scenario, there is something that points to greed. And I'm not sure if that would align itself well with the motto, country above self. We have seen in this episode a power struggle, a struggle for leadership. And it looks like some of the parties, maybe one or two of them, and maybe really none of them, would go to any extent to ensure that they remain as a leader. And when I say to any extent, even to go back on things we have achieved I mean, the unity construct was a shining light throughout the region. So may I argue it was the best thing happened to the Federation. No doubt we see a lot of progress, especially on the sister island of St. Kitts. And we must admit that we here in Nevis been testifying that we have gotten the most ever from this federal arrangement, even though not sufficient, and even though not what was expected. And so it was a good thing. It sounded like a good thing. It felt like a good thing to a certain extent, even though I was always one who was constantly worried about the consummation of Nevis by St. Kitts. And look what have happened. We have seen the total debacle of what everyone thinks, and even across the region, was such a good thing. And so one questioned the reality or the adherence to the motto, country above self. And I see that the motto tends to get pushed under the table when we are experiencing these kind of rancor, and the source of it points to something less than country above self, I think, Mr. Stanley.
Well, based on the Westminster model, I think that has its source of problems regarding the elected leaders, elected parliamentarian, as the case might be, are elected, and then they choose amongst themselves as to who would become the prime minister. At the same time, based on the parliamentary makeup, they serve whoever becomes prime minister within that group. They serve, and also they've got the power, based on the Westminster model, to exclude people within the parliament. And in fact, I believe that that has always been a recipe for our current problem, the ordeal that now confronts us. I, in the past, participated in the Sir Fred Phillips Commission, and they had extensive hearings, and those of us who had something to contribute made good contributions, solid contributions. At the same time, the document was produced, but it wound up in the shelves in Bastille. Unfortunately, I think, based on the current ordeal, we must rethink and redefine our strategy with reference to the Westminster model. And as a result, it can be replaced through reform, constitutional reform, by a better model, whereas you would have a parliament where every member is a participant, not only in debates, but also to offer constructive advice and recommendations for the powers that be. We are one nation, and we have to be able to understand where we are, where we want to go, and how we must get there. So my proposal at this particular juncture is for us to again redefine our priorities. And I think the priority is based on our calling on the Parliament to make recommendations for a new constitutional arrangement. We can no longer, in my view, rely on the Westminster model for continuity, and history would bear me out. We need to reform our Constitution, not only reforming, but at the same time transforming our Constitution to a model that might be that of the United States, whereas we have the three houses, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches of government. Although they are equal in power, slightly, the Supreme Court, which is the judicial branch of government, is the deciding factor if there is a dispute between the other two branches. So, based on that model, I think we would have a more guaranteed continuity with reference to governance, and as a result, we would have more unity. Webbo.
Well, I think, in the true democracy, that's how it works, Mr. Stanley. The three pillars of government, the judiciary, always the one who defines the Constitution or speak on behalf of the Constitution. Yes, in America they have the High Court, and that rules over the constitutional matters. But it's very important to know that even though we often make reference to, or frequently make reference to, the Westminster system, the British Constitution operates completely different to the Constitution they endorse for us. They endorse a Constitution that brings about stagnancy, because you have to have that 2/3 in the House. It's difficult to effectuate a change in our Constitution, the Constitution endorsed by the UK for us. It is our responsibility to deal with it, because we are a growing country, and we're going to experience a lot of things whereby the Constitution might inhibits us to go forward. The Constitution might just simply need a little adjustment, because if you look at the British Constitution, it's an uncodified document, meaning it's not in one booklet as the St. Kitts Nevis Constitution. It's a constitution that's constantly evolving. It's a constitution that changes every day, basically, as another law is added to it, and at times repeal an older law. It's not like that here in the Federation. Our constitution is seriously entrenched, and it takes a lot in terms of supporting Parliament on one side, in order to affect it. And another thing, somehow we use the Constitution as a political tool, and we tend to want to twist it and turn it how we want to, and always finding ourselves in court, like the previous administration, the previous Labour administration. They had a lot of things to misinterpretation. I mean, seemingly willfully misinterpretation. But Constitution of our federation, it is due for overhaul, and we are drifting further away from that, though, with this last breakup here. I think the Constitution in the House, I mean the makeup of the House, was a perfect one to adjust things within the Constitution. But with this last breakup, I think we're drifting further and further away from it. But that's how democracy works. That's how it's supposed to work. Here in the Federation, the judiciary is not totally independent at times. To me, it's they does not exert the power which they should. I mean, I look at Israel. The Prime Minister is on trial. Even the Prime Minister of England, he had to pay up a fine the other day for keeping a party during the COVID lockdown. These are the things we expect the judiciary to be lively about, basically proclaiming and standing up for the fact that everyone is under the law. And but we don't see these things happening here. But yes, politically, our constitution needs to be revisited. I am not sure if it will solve the present problem we are having now, with any adjustments at all, really. But I can see areas where we got to go back to the constitution, boundary changes and all these things. We need to revisit the constitution in a serious way.
Well, you don't think that the British Constitution, I don't think it's a constitution that they're governed by. I forgot the term that was used in the past. I used it in the past anyhow. For going forward, we need to revisit the Constitution and to zero in on areas where we think reform is radically needed. Just the other day, we heard...
Mr. Stanley, name one area that you think the Constitution needs radically reform.
The other day, there were complaints about the Prime Minister going around with the date of election in his pocket. And I'm saying that if we will reform the Constitution, that is one area. Now I don't have my...
Yeah, okay, and what problem will it solve? Then he would not be able to have the date in his pocket?
Well, everybody would know when the date is, because it would be a public document coming out.
Right, so it will solve that problem. So everybody will then know what the date is.
True.
Okay. What else?
Well, I don't have my list of the 17 recommendations that I made.
Yeah, no, the reason why I ask you so is because I've been doing this thing over 3 decades. And every time there's a problem, we need constitutional reform. We need constitutional reform, right? In this constitution that I have here, for instance, it says, the office of the leader of the opposition shall become vacant if it appears to the Governor General that the leader of the opposition is no longer able to command the support of a majority of the representatives who do not support the government, or if no representative appears to him to be able to command such support. What is difficult about that, for instance, and needs changing? If the Governor General does not activate it, or if the leader of the opposition decides nobody can move me because I'm there for 5 years, what about that you have to change?
The thing is that the executive branch is intertwined with the parliamentarian.
No, work with me. This language says that the Governor General...
Who is the executive? Go ahead, Webbo.
Why is it nobody wants me to talk? I allow you... I specifically want to know, because people keep... And that is why, in my view, we're not getting anywhere. Because every time there's a problem, somebody comes up, we need constitutional reform. Right? So I'm trying to zero in on it and give a specific example. And I use... this is section 58, right? It gives clear, simple language, as in my view, is throughout the whole Constitution. So what in it needs changing if a person decides I'm not going to do it? So if you have this,
at this juncture,
if you have this clearly stated and somebody says I'm not going to do it, will you do change the Constitution?
not necessarily, but what I'm zeroing in on right now is that do we have, once the process the 21-day process and the 90-day process is exhausted, or between those two periods, from now until then.
I did not read anything just now about 21 days and 90 days.
I'm just saying to
walk with me. I read something specific, and I ask you, what?
Well, let me ask you.
What is walk with me? What is difficult about that, so that cannot be executed?
It must be, it can be, and will be.
Okay, so in that example that I gave, nothing is wrong with that.
None.
So you wouldn't change that?
No.
And I bet you that if I could go through the whole thing, right, and if persons were to abide by it, it will work, and you will find maybe it's not necessary to change it.
But do we have a federal government currently, Webbo?
If we have a federal government?
Currently.
It's difficult for me to answer because I do not know what all of the papers that were filed with the Governor General. I know that Mr. Brantley and Mr. Richards, for instance, said that they wrote to the Governor General indicating that they no longer support Dr. Harris as the Prime Minister. Right? Now, we can go to the said Constitution, and in it states, in using my own language, something similar to what I just read. If the Governor General is convinced that the Prime Minister no longer has the support of the majority of elected representatives, then what he can do. So the point I'm making now, without going into much detail and specifics, is to make the point to you that everybody keep talking about changing the Constitution when the document that we have, if applied and followed, can work.
It can.
So then what's the sense of talking about the community? Walk with me. What's the sense? Good evening,
point in question.
I'm very sorry. Please call back.
Do we have a federal government currently? And I understand you. I understand what you're saying.
But if you understand me, why you keep asking me the same thing? I said I do not know.
Okay.
I'm trying to follow up on the point that you and I have been making for about 40 minutes.
Well, my thing is to have continuity in a government, and in the document it would have stated when a government begins and when it ends.
So you wanted a date in it to say that this government begins in 2005 and end in 2010? They put something general in there. You want them to put the names of the persons too?
No, no.
This is funny. That's
no,
the right moment. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
Good evening to Mr. Stanley. Good evening to Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Good evening.
And good evening to the listening public. Webbo, I'm in the same dilemma that you're in right now. And I've been thinking this last how long? You notice how everybody's constitution this, constitution that, the constitution need revamping. Why are we going to go constitution when we're not even doing what the constitution says? We had a situation back where the motion had two motions of no confidence against the former prime minister. And everybody playing smart. Until we start doing what is right, we get these problems. The situation, you're going to have the same problems all over again. Take, for instance, the Charleston Accord. It was designed in part and in a great part to deal with the revenue sharing with Nevis. The Prime Minister signed on to it. Well, the time comes when they're holding his foot about the revenue sharing, he resort back to the Constitution where the Constitution said before. Nobody, none of them ever do what the Constitution said. How are you going to change the Constitution to remedy what? If you change it to, it's going to be the same thing. Nobody respecting the Constitution. Nobody doing what it said. So I don't know what's standing in it. Everybody as a talk that get no results. The day we start, I do not think that anybody should do anything to the Constitution until they start. It says, and if, when they do what it says, and they fail, then you still start thinking of revamping the Constitution.
Oh, right.
I don't believe that they're following the Constitution, doing what the Constitution says. Every they come with something, and the Constitution says, so this is what the Constitution says. The Constitution on it. Well, if the Constitution is not clear, it usually come and do what it. You know, this is right.
Caller, I could add something to what you're saying.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and you see, the other thing is they keep using this thing all the time. I just read a section from it, and the small words the Constitution use, and so they're giving us the impression that only if you went to law school or someplace that you can understand what it says. Yes, it's gibberish. You know, and you know, I'm tired of it. Nothing. I mean, the thing that I read there was so simple.
It needs changing.
Yeah, and it needs changing. And I think you're so right. Until we start to obey something, no matter what you put there. If a person say I ain't gonna do it, I ain't gonna do it.
Find a way to subvert it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
That's my portion.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Webber. Sorry. Good evening to
Yes.
your guest.
Yes. Go ahead. You're on the air.
I'm trying to turn off my radio. Oh my. All right. Now, we keep talking about the Constitution needs fixing. Are you and your guests aware that it was reviewed and recommendations made by Sir Fred Phillips and another QC from Trinidad? Are you aware of it?
Yeah, I am aware of it, and the point about it is, right?
That to me is the starting point.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, and I think what the caller said, if a person decides they're not going to obey any rule, it doesn't matter what rule it is, how much you change it, it's the execution of it, and that is what we have in the society, isn't it?
So what I would suggest, right, is that whole report be made public so people could see. Because if you're not familiar with the Constitution and law, you're just jumping all over it. So it will go through a sequence and they could say, this is what it says, we need amending, and then we have a starting point. Now, a question that has been on my mind. When it was said that the motion was filed yesterday, when did they get the response from the governor? Can nobody ask him a question? Because we were waiting on him. Did he give them an answer? What do you know about that?
I saw something in social media suggesting that it was a letter sent to Messrs. Brantley and Richards suggesting that the Governor General had received their correspondence and he was awaiting legal advice, something to that effect. Now, I don't know whether that was illegitimate or not, but that
is what I heard, right? I heard that part. So when I heard that the motion, I was trying to assume that maybe he called him and told him, this is what I got, and maybe therefore you should go that route.
No, I don't know. Well, you assume that. I don't know if I would have assumed that. In these kind of levels of
political
communication, you do things differently than call somebody and tell them, respond to them in writing. In other words, if the communication was by letter, at that level, they normally respond
I am
in the
trying to
same
figure
way.
out why did they move to that step. But when
Yeah.
I went to the reading of the response by the Prime Minister, I concluded that he did not want any more talk. I mean, the way it was structured, you know. And I asked myself the question, why didn't he let somebody read over that thing first? That is why we are told, do not respond or do not correct your children when you're angry, because you might do something you regret. When you go and respond when in anger, you say something you regret. Because I believe, even when you listen to the content, there were some good points in it, but the tone, I think the tone was pushed it over. And I am sad, not sad like some people, just that our people must learn how to communicate. Because at the end of the day, in a war, nobody wins, In a war, nobody wins. Except, they say when elephant fights, the grass suffer. You know, so it is sad in that way, because many people were tired of this tribalism. But it's because that we're going back to tribalism, and where will that get us? So, that's it.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Okay, so this, what I'm trying to, okay, let's take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Herbert, and to everyone.
Good evening.
Mr. Herbert, what is in question is not the Constitution, but the credibility of elected officials. You listen to the kind of things being said. I thought people take an oath of office, but then you hear all kind of things being leaked out. And this to me is much worse than anything. People's credibility, their honesty, their integrity, their decency in public office of honorable men is in question. And this is what we should be discussing. This is not a constitutional problem. This is a problem of fellow men cannot conduct themselves in honorable ways.
Caller, might I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
You believe in democracy?
Well, like I say from last week, our democracy reminds me of a state of emergency.
The question I asked you was,
Yes, I believe
you
in
believe
the
in democracy. Okay. Are you aware that there is a view that for democracy, leaking is good you
Yes, sir. But when persons take the Bible,
walk with me.
yes.
So you agree with that? You believe in that as well?
Well, like I said, Mr. Herbert, leaking. If you take an oath not to leak and then you leak, that's why I'm saying that your credibility then comes straight into focus.
Right, but
and then with the title of honorable, you become an honorable, unstable person in my mind.
Right, I get that, but you agree. You said you agree with the view that leaking is good for democracy. I understand the point you're making with who leaks it. Then you can deal with that. They have ways of dealing with that and them. You agree with that, right?
Yes.
But in terms of leaking, they say it's good for democracy because that's a way that the public knows.
But isn't that sad, Mr. Herbert?
That the public will know?
No. That you have to, things have to be leaked.
Yeah, but
information that the public should have. That's the same thing I hear Mr. Askafan was saying. This is information that the public should have. But for them to have it, somebody has to leak it.
Yeah, but you would agree that in all democracies that happens, right?
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying that the principle of the persons in charge of the democracy then becomes a question, so then they are not fit. That's what I'm saying, Mr. Herbert. These persons are not fit for public office. And this is the discussion that I want people to understand, because this is where I'm turning my new discussion.
Yeah, but when I am debating you on the discussion, you don't want to consider my points.
Yes, I'm considering it, but what I'm saying, Mr. Herbert, it's bitter. It's something very bitter. When what you're saying, even though it's the truth, but to me it's bitter to tell a child that he would have to cheat to get ahead. That's what I'm looking at in society. That children is gonna copy the elders' direction, which is a dishonest one. And then we're gonna continue to have dishonest leaders. And then we wonder, why are we having this problem? Like you say, you've been on radio saying this thing, Mr. Herbert, for years. I've listened to you. It's not a constitutional problem. It's a people problem, but persons don't want to admit that with you. And that is what you're trying to bring out.
But this might help.
Yes.
You just made an interesting point that it is a people problem. Right?
Yes, sir.
You would agree that people will be who they are, and one way of dealing with them is to understand who they are and deal with them accordingly?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All
You're
right.
putting it right here.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good night, brother. Good night. Yeah, good night, brother.
Yes, you're on the air, could you?
Parliament and Syndic.
Yes.
Brother, I'm a part of the foundation of the team Unity. Because I am one. When they was rallying, I was one behind Dr. Harris, telling him to just open Dr. Douglas and let the country move on with a unity government. None of them, the people like culture, pulling them jam down and all of us. You understand? And yes, a disappointed will take place. I believe that things could have worked out different. But anyway, that they do what they got to do. The leader from Sean Richard, and you know the Mark Bentley, they do what they got to do. They file a motion, Sean filed a motion of no confidence against the Prime Minister. Well, people like me and other people in the Federation will suffer. Because me know that this unity government was doing well. I do know, up to now, no one coming out and say what this agreement is all about. Now, I hear them saying because Mr. Now listen, they talk and he not listen. And he not hear, he not this and not that. We like to know what this agreement is all about, because those are big man, those are university scholars, and I believe that they can sit down and trash out these things instead that to put this country in this political turmoil again, that they got to go back to the polls. Now, Nevis Island election will call sometime next year. And just imagine that the election don't call, before the election will call before the Nevis Island election. So, whether I just calling the people at NRP, calling from the people at PLP, calling from the people at the water of this country to stop, look and listen, and to move this country forward with a unity government. Where I come from, to move this country forward with a unity government. Because as far as I'm concerned, some of those who say they leaders, they don't have the use for the federation, they don't have the use for the country. They only have use about themselves and the package. But whenever I get back, I'll get back. Look at this too.
All right, thank you. Yes, you know, I knew, I was of the view, it's not everybody thought that the problem is the Constitution. It was just that the persons who were of that view, the other view, were not saying anything. Now that some persons are now voicing their view that the Constitution is not the real problem, I bet that will quiet down. Because to me, the case can't be made. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. Webbo? You know what I noticed? I read this the other day and it hit home. It tells me a lot. I've learned a lot from it. It says some people prefer a well-dressed lie make it truth. And I realize that some people fall for this distraction about atmosphere of the Honorable Vance Emery's passing, and that people should wait until that's passed. The Prime Minister, that, and then he gone in his
Caller,
campaign.
let me ask, are you moving because you're sort of going in and out?
Outside where I could get a good signal.
Yeah, anyway, go ahead. But it's
The Prime Minister in his letter said we should wait until and it's in bad taste. It's in poor taste. Deal this during the period of mourning for the Honorable Vance Emery. For the PAM leader and the CCM. So they should until after. Meanwhile, it's not the following night. He's on a platform rampaging and drumming up his supporters. He still thinks that he could fool people with his nonsense. What is so difficult about giving me this fair share? I mean, until this was brought to the public, some people don't. This is the final straw, and that's really brought to the public.
Caller, why don't you do this for me? Try and put your point together, because the quality of the call is not very good. So because it's going in and out.
As I feel, it has now come to the public, and now it's come to the public. Carrying on, he's showing no sign of trying to solve this issue. I suppose we'll see how it goes, because emotional no confidence is in. And I think this is where they jump off and say we can't change. Clear. But if I know what they know, I know. They will try and deal with that and be expeditiously and let the chips fall where they may. Suffer for it. It's costing us.
Okay, caller, I think we got the gist of it, but really and truly the quality of the signal is not all that good. But I think we got it. Maybe you can try again a little later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, right, thanks much. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening again, Webbo. Now, last night I listened to a show on your station with the NRP candidates. And I was amazed at the issue about Nevis here. They were joking, saying, oh, it's my personal thing. That issue should concern our division, because if in the present arrangement, the agreement they had say it is not valid, what would they expect to get should they get into power? And one was saying, well, what you do with what you get? I mean, Nevisions, you know. Nevisions. And other people say, well, they get a little more. They could have been content. Now, if somebody, you see, people were enslaved for years, you know. And there were many slaves who were saying, well, look, your master feeding us. And look, we got somewhere to lie down. And when emancipation was coming, they didn't want to leave. And so this is supposed to be a new vision issue. Not that Mark looking money. And what Mark do with the money. Think of what he could have done for Nevis if he was given Nevis fair share or even some more. So it surprises me because I hear people saying, oh, Mark want money and some want power. That is very poor analysis because I don't have any dog in the fight, you know. I like Harris too, but I am saying that this issue should have been dealt with long time ago, and unless it is settled, you're going to be hearing in 2060. Well, I might be around, having the same talk. So Nevision supposed to be united on the issue. So it surprises me, you know, and politicians are the best. They are the best, very opportunistic. So I am here saying, people are, some look in power and some, nobody knows who will be leading, you know, after the election. Nobody, you have any idea. The people could say, we will win, you will win, I will win. Nobody knows until after the votes are counted. But what will be the situation between Nevis and their share? Or are they willing to go back to the old thing with the Labour Party where they were content with nothing? And the younger people in Nevis must know what they want. Because it is even more than that. It is even more than just the money. It's a matter that Nevis must be treated with respect. And I don't think some people get it. Well, maybe you see my grandfather and my grandmother were from Nevis. Right? My father's mother was from Nevis and my mother's father from Nevis. So I have an affinity. So I am saying to the people of Nevis, you must look out for your own concern. Palm and Labour are accustomed to fight. I mean, House is a Labour. They are accustomed to fight. What will you get? So you will become the grass under the feet of the 2 elephants. All right then.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Hi, Webbo, how are you?
All right.
Hi, Webbo.
You're on the air, could you
Hi,
go?
how are you, man? Very interesting conversation. I think what's missing for the most part, from the way I look at it rather, is the fact that we have a document that was written 40 years ago in the, you know, as our constitution. And of course we haven't had one syllable or letter added to it since. Now, a constitution is a breathing and living document, from what I gather. And when you look at a constitution, sometimes you have to look at the spirit in which it was written. Whether it's 40 years or 100 years ago. Because things change and circumstances changes. You speak, when it was written as they saw it in the day when they wrote it. But in the case of what we have here, for example, the Constitution speaks to the idea of vacancy as it relates to the Prime Minister. Creating a vacancy and how that the Prime Minister can be removed. But nobody has ever pulled away the veil or the curtain, so to speak, and looked behind in terms of the spirit of the law. And say, for example, can you create a vacancy in our Constitution by not just by death or by resignation, but by the fact that you don't have a majority of your ministers, of the sitting parliamentarians who are elected by the people, a majority of them, which would mean 6 out of 11, just sitting with you and giving you support. Now, if they all walked away from you or say they don't want to serve with you anymore as a leader, mind you, the Constitution speaks and says that the Prime Minister is the government and all its ministers serve at the behest of the Prime Minister, because he peers or he digs in, he basically serves through their ministries. He has the last say They get the instruments from the Prime Minister and the Governor by his recommendation to the Governor. Now, the idea what I'm really trying to get across here is this. If the all 6 of them, majority that is, or the 11 elected, which gets their powers from the people who sit in cabinet, and their concerns are reflected, whereas the people's concerns are put forth in cabinet. If they're not there, now do you have a government in terms of they're not there? Do we have an autocracy or do we have a dictatorship? You have to look into that. The spirit of the Constitution.
Let me ask you this, caller. So you are talking about something separate?
I'm talking about, for example, we have let's say, motion is now been filed against the Prime Minister. It's never right, and is that a valid? The issue is how valid is that? And I'm saying to you that we have to look at the spirit of the law and what creates a vacancy. Now, the Prime Minister needs the representatives there because they're sent there by the people.
You know, caller, I, to be fair, in the interest of time, what are you suggesting or asking if this is being addressed in the Constitution?
It's not directly addressed in the Constitution.
Who told you that?
What I'm saying to you is this. The letter of the law says by death or by resignation you create a vacancy. But I'm asking the question, if your ministers step away and say they do not want you, is that a creation of a vacancy? So
as far as you know,
at some point,
walk with
that
me.
has to be addressed.
Yeah, I get what you. So, as far as you know, the current issue or problem that they have, the current Constitution does not speak to it. That's what you're saying.
Directly to that in letter black and white. But I'll give you an example.
No, before you go, let me ask you this. Let me ask you what and this, because you said it isn't written in black and white.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. Hello. This is written in black and white in the Constitution. Right. Hello. I'm going to read something for you in the Constitution that's written in black and white and see whether or not you don't think it addresses it. Is that fair?
Go ahead.
Okay. Section 52 of the Constitution, subsection 6 says, the Governor General shall remove the Prime Minister from office if a resolution of no confidence in the government is passed by the National Assembly and the Prime Minister does not within 3 days either resign from his office or advise the Governor General to dissolve Parliament. This section is in black and white. It doesn't.
Black and white.
It doesn't speak to the situation we have now in any way.
Well, the situation we have now, what I'm really saying, trying to get across, the way I understand it, is that the monk that is being forwarded, that is being tabled put forth now, is directly against the Prime Minister, not against the government. The Prime Minister is the government, but is not directly against the government.
The way you understand it.
When I understand it.
Okay, so you would agree that work with me. Work with me. You will agree it is possible that something might be written or out there, which you may understand it separately for one reason or the other. Maybe you didn't have the full document to read it, right? But that doesn't mean that it doesn't speak to it. You agree with that?
Of course.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Interesting conversation. Yeah. I look forward to this works out.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for. I'm very sorry. Please call back. 469-1616 and 1700. Yes. No, I think the caller is back now. After that, I'm going to come to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good night again. Yeah, good night again.
You're on the air. Could you go ahead?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, right? My concern is about the people of Nevis, right? Because I get calls from different people in Nevis and some them on the ground and some overseas. They tell me that for the CBL program, that how come the Honorable Vance Amari, when he was in government, he was getting none. And the Honorable Terry wasn't getting none. And the government failed to function. They are telling me that the kind of money that will come out from the CBI program, there is no development in Nevis. From that. What happened, you know? So it's a kind of ticklish thing with the people in Nevis and this money that's coming over from the CBI. Because they want to know how Terry used to get you without the CBI program, and Vance Amari when he was here, he used to get you without the CBI program, and they were just complaining and bawling about nothing but the CBI program. So they want to know, that's why now the CBI program come a problem. Well, they make agreement with the fair share problem because of the timing for the fair share. But however you work it out, I don't know because I am not an economical man in the game. In good time not. But he left the Prime Minister and not ranting and Sean Richard to understand that whatever. But the people in Nevis concerned about now that this money that them come to Nevis, there is nothing to do to make development of this project because there is a lot of unfinished project up here to finish and there is nothing done.
Caller, let me ask you a question.
Sure, brother, sure.
You said the people of Nevis, some of them call you and said they ain't see nothing, correct?
Yeah, brother.
Walk with me. Is that correct?
Sure, yes.
Yeah. About how many of them, the people of Nevis, call you and said they didn't see anything?
When people from overseas.
No. Walk with me. About 20. Walk with me. About 50.
About 100.
Okay. So about 100. Right, I got you. About 100. About 100 persons call you and say they didn't see anything. What?
There is much development from the CBA program coming over. I don't know because of the starting of the fish or whatever. But the Vance Amari and Terry.
I got you. I asked permission to ask you a question or two. Okay. Now you go ahead.
Interesting. Well, but we're not having a constitutional crisis at all. There are times one would speak to the Constitution and say, well, it maybe should be revisited for different reasons. But this particular situation that exists is, to me, it's not even a political crisis, really. It is something that's been practiced over and over again amongst government and, parliamentary democracy. A vote of no confidence.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo, to you and your panelists.
Good evening.
I wonder if your last caller have a portfolio ministry because somebody always calling him and asking him something. Anyway, so much for that. A couple of callers ago, the guy was talking about the Constitution. Webbo, I listened to your program long enough, and I recall a couple of years ago, that gentleman told you he wanted to go run for election. So you were calling for some advice from your panelists. A couple of years ago, I never forget that. Did he lose his deposit or he didn't worry? That's all I want to ask.
Okay.
Well, the question was asked. I'm not sure about if he lost his deposit. I'm not even know that somebody had political interest, really. But there was a caller before Webbo, and he makes a strong point. He speaks to the creditability of elected officials. Webbo, over the last 10 years, every time there's a political, outburst, put it that way, as we are having now, a political upheaval, it is about people who taken simple, literally interpreted words of the Constitution and making a big thing about it. Very simple words, and sometimes we have to hire a lawyer from all Trinidad and everywhere to interpret something which is very straightforward. Those at the political leadership who sometimes are dissatisfied with the current circumstance and position they're in, always try to run roughsheds over the everyday people about what the Constitution says. To me, in the last 10 years, we haven't really been having a political issue or political crisis here that is caused by a bad Constitution. All the thing, I mean, when we went to the Privy Council, all these was very straightforward thing, but we had to spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money for them to be sorted out, really. So it's about really credibility, and it's important because we always talk about the Westminster Constitution, but the Westminster Constitution doesn't operate the way we operate here. There's a degree of honesty sometimes that is requires, and decency and morality for our Constitution and the democratic process to work the way it should work. You see, in England, and I don't want to go off too much on this, they have something called ministerial responsibility, and that's why we always hear so often that a minister have to resign in England, the prime minister have to resign. These are conventions, they are not law, but they carry the weight of law, and even sometimes heavier weight. These are guiding principles upon which the Constitution of the UK floats. We don't know about these things down here, really, but I must make the point again, in the last 10 years, the political upheavals we've been having is not because of a bad Constitution. It's about people who wants to fool the public as to the literal meaning of the Constitution or stipulations of the Constitution.
Well, my question I posed to Webbo was to bring about continuity rather than a motion of no confidence, bringing about the non-existence of a legal government. Of course, the GG, Governor General, would be there as the executive in his capacity as the Queen's representative. But in the
that's what you're talking about, like in a new constitution, or revised constitution, or reform constitution?
Right, it would.
Okay, well, listen to this. This is the old the current constitution, subsection 7 of 52, of section 52, right? You know, as I said, sometimes I, don't mind people just keep talking and talking and talking, but after a while you get weary, right? When people are just talking, I understand sometimes we sound academic and scholastic and so on and so forth, right? But section 7, subsection 7 of section 52, see what it says. If at any time between the holding of a general election of representatives and the first meeting of the National Assembly thereafter, the Governor General considers that in consequence of changes in the membership of the Assembly resulting from that election, the Prime Minister will not be able to command the support of the majority of the representative, the Governor General may remove the Prime Minister from office. So everybody wants in the Constitution, it wants it to revise, to put it exactly how they think it should be. It makes
it's straightforward.
But this is what I'm saying. So maybe everybody wants to be a star or an author to say, well, I put that in the Constitution, and then everybody else. So we end up with nothing. Just like the caller a little while ago, right? He said the thing needed to be in black and white, so I take up the Constitution and read it.
Well, let me just say this.
Now it's the first time you ever hear me making a case so strong, right? Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air.
Well, good night.
Night.
Good night, Mr. Stanley, and good night, Naya. Make it in here right this time.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Yes. Webber, last week, remember me say, if me the Prime Minister want me to do, you really have to, that the Prime Minister have to do what me think he should do. But the whole point about it, up to this present moment, you don't really see that the Prime Minister do nothing wrong yet pertaining to the Constitution. Remember last week, we kind of end off telling you, a lot of people said this, and if government do not work that way, it just can't work. And the way how government work, that's the way you're supposed to argue upon. Now, up to today, the Governor General called the Prime Minister yet for asking for step down or not. I don't think so. So, if the Prime Minister not take the initiative for himself and decide to resign, up to now, nothing gone wrong yet. Nothing gone wrong yet. Up to now, if you deal with the Constitution, you see, and and your word and this, but nothing gone wrong yet if you deal with the Constitution. If you not deal with the Constitution, then plenty things go wrong. Okay, then, Webber.
Okay.
Good. The Constitution speaks to the process, and it is there in black and white. There is nothing you can change simply because it is written.
Say what you just said again, Mr. Stanley.
There is nothing you can do because it is there, and it is a guiding principles are there, written in a document. But the first caller, the lady, she told you, based on the Fred Phillips Commission, what recommendations were made.
Yeah, but you see, Mr. Stanley, I get it, and at another time you can talk about that commission that was thing and all that and stuff like that, because I know you want to let people know, right? But according to my direction of what we're discussing right now, and my role is to keep things in a particular sequence, right? That Constitution that you're talking about, right, which should have been in place and reform this one, we can have a discussion on that. But that is irrelevant right now to this Constitution and what we're talking about in terms of the situation. You don't agree with that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so walk with me then.
Based on where we are, there's a process, a date, or dates, as the case might be, and those processes must be followed to bring about a solution to the current ordeal we're having. And once we have gone through the processes, the dates as prescribed by law in the Constitution, we will get to the other side, and a solution would be applied. It's based on black and white.
Which is the current Constitution.
Exactly.
So you are finally admitting that if we follow the dictates of the Constitution, the problem can be solved.
Right, it will be solved.
Okay, without reforming it.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. You see, that is what discussion brings out. You see, Naya?
Yes, I don't.
Let me get a break. This is Thought That Get Results. Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Naya Library. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. We'll be back after these.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Good evening, back on this episode of Thought That Get Results. You're on the air. Could you go ahead?
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Webber. What you said last is not necessarily true. That is why lawyers are hired who will apply precedent from similar jurisdiction. So while it may be written there like that, they're going to interpret it not straight from the Constitution, you know.
No, what I said, I disagree with you, is true. What I did, I read from the Constitution.
I heard what you read.
Work with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I read what was written in the Constitution. And what I said was that section, whether or not it was not applicable, what that means is, then you apply the section to the particular problem, the Governor General or whoever, and then the lawyers or whoever, if they agree or disagree with the interpretation, then they go to court or whatever.
What do you think what do you think the governor was seeking advice?
What I'm saying.
What I just said.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, right? And why? What I'm saying is, you have a document. A problem arises. You go to the document and you say, well, okay, based on the problem, this section deals with it.
But it is still left open for interpretation.
But everything is always left open for interpretation.
Right, so, now you said if they follow it like that, that is not correct. And all right then.
Yes. If I no matter what somebody says, all right. If you operate in a business and you write the rules of operation, even in cricket and basketball, right, or whatever, you have the rules. They apply the rule. Sometimes you have challenges, not correct?
Yes.
But the point is, you have written something which will deal with this particular problem. I don't know why it's so difficult. Once there's something to gain or to lose, a person is going to try all sorts of different things.
Well, but the rules even have rules.
Yes.
Because there are rules of interpretation.
Yes.
You know, that our tradition is accustomed to, the literal in interpretation. So you can't come with some kind of purposive interpretation. It's literal interpretation. The words are written and you interpret them literally.
Right, and then you have this document or any document say, well, okay, if you're not satisfied, then this is the other process. You do this and you go to court and you say we didn't like that decision, then you can appeal, etc. You understand that. But to say, straight out that, the document don't, that's...
And then the reputation of the lawyer is on the line. So the lawyer will have to make sure that he's, representing himself properly, in terms of interpreting these rules, So.
But to every time you have a situation or what people just keep talking about, the Constitution is a game and people use, and a lot of the times also you don't even say what is wrong with the Constitution, or what you're going to change, or what you're going to add, and for what reason.
I'm very surprised that the Constitution comes into this political upheaval, to be quite honest.
But it's a game.
I wasn't even aware that people are talking about the Constitution in this case.
It is what you call it? Let's call it spinning. Distraction. Distraction, basically. And even the caller a little earlier, when he said he wants it in black and white, and I read it in black and white. So some of it sometimes is for a different purpose, right? It doesn't matter what rule, and you remember when we sometimes have the debate on electoral reform and all that, and I keep saying, no matter what rule you write, if people decide they ain't going to do it, they can do it, no matter how you write it.
You don't need a constitution to govern you.
And then you have a situation where you get into office, the same people who are making noise that stay there for 15, 20 years, and they don't change it. Not do nothing. Why? Because for the most part, maybe it was just a game.
Well, let me just say this. I feel honorable people, they don't need to be guided by anything written. There is something within you that tells you what is right and tells you what is wrong. And if you decide to follow the right path, you don't need to be guided by a document that is written. But if you decide to go the wrong avenue, you would need some guiding principles to keep you on the straight and narrow.
I think the implication of a constitution does require that we adhere unto it, and therefore it's a guiding principle. It's quite a lot to just look at and feel like your balance or your judgment or your whatever of right and wrong could lead you along the perfect way. I mean, you're dealing with a population, you're dealing with an opposition. There must be that document that speaks to all so much various aspects.
Now the thing is simple.
Yeah.
We were at this crossroads in 2015, and depending on what side you were on, you said one thing, and then depending on what side you're on this time, you said something else. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. Quickly, Mr. Herbert. I want to give a challenge out to the community of Nevis. Let us do for a week govern ourselves like how the government ministers are governing themselves. Let's do that. Let's go around doing what they're doing. Leaking information, cussing, and all that, just for a week. And see the type of society we end up with. Thank you very much, Mr. Hub.
Before you go, where you don't think you think that behavior is done only by people in government office, we don't do it on our daily basis to ourselves too?
Yes, but if we do it out in public, like they're doing it.
Well, we don't. Well, how you know we do it if it's not done in public?
How we know?
How you know that we do it? You just say yes, we do it, but how if it's not in public? How you know?
What I'm saying, let everyone do it together at the same time.
Okay.
That's what I mean, not just a few.
Oh, okay.
Let us all do it as a community, and then maybe the ministers of government then will understand. Thank you.
Okay.
The Magna Carta is what governs Britain. It was written back in 1106, if my memory serves me correctly. So Britain doesn't really have a true constitution, but it's a Magna Carta, which is, it's the Magna Carta.
So so you think we should have a Magna Carta too?
No, Webbo.
Oh, okay.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, but no, that's why I asked. I'm just checking.
I was trying to remember
But Britain do have a constitution, though. I studied the British Constitution. I studied constitutional law. I studied British Constitution. I studied European Constitution, and the proposed European Constitution of 2005. But as I say, it's different. It's not a codified document, as we have it here. So it's exposed to changes on a daily basis.
Look, now is you said that you're surprised that the Constitution is brought into this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
It is simple. In 2015, and leading up to that, when Dr. Douglas was Prime Minister, and then there were the majority of elected representatives who did not support him, they argued Dr. Douglas needs to go without putting up too much argument. On the basis that there were the majority of representatives, right?
Plus the support of the majority.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello. Good night.
Yes. You're on the air. Could you go ahead?
Yes, sir. But I'm going to be really short. Based on the track record between Nevis and St. Kitts, based on the history of Nevis and St. Kitts, we never been treated fairly. We never been treated right. We are not being treated right. They're not treating us right now. So based on the whole track record, there's nothing there to suggest that we're gonna ever be treated fairly. So why are we in this federation thing if we've been treated like dirt? When Labour was in power, they treated us like we didn't exist, and now we are not being treated fairly. So there's nothing to suggest to me that going forward we'll ever be treated fairly. the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, it sounds really good, you know, it sounds good, 2 little islands, 1 federation. But if you're in that arrangement and you're not being treated right, why are you in it? I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. We pride ourselves on how we are so bright and educated, but why do we take so much crap from politicians over in St. Kitts? I don't understand it. That's my bit for now, Webbo.
Okay, thank you.
Well, based on what the motion of no confidence is attempting to bring about, the Honourable Mark Grantley and the Honourable Sean Richards supposedly be seeing eye to eye, and then we will get our fair share. They don't have to go to the World Bank as Prime Minister Harris has recommended. Simple 6 formers can do the math, and we should be at the end of it, at the end of the process, get our fair share. So let's not throw the baby with the bathwater too early, because the fair share, based on the promise, as the Honourable Mark Grantley said, we will be getting our fair share. And those who would call the fellow in St. Kitts and complain that they see nothing happening in Nevis, let them come to Nevis. I mean, supposedly they are calling from here, but the amount they have done, Charlestown has been transformed, Brownhill has been transformed, and the transformation is not over. It's just the beginning. But you have to do it with money. And those who don't see where the money is spent, go to Henry's Road, go to Shaw's Road, and you will see exactly where the big money been spent. I lived in our jurisdiction for many years, and it's the federal government that took care of the road network. It costs a lot of money for road upkeep. So those who are not able to see the transformation of Nevis in terms of the road network, housing, and the whole 9 yards, let them pull the wool from over their eyes. And if their eyes are open and they can't see, close them. They might be able to see when they're closed. Well,
I suppose in life people view things differently, and I've come to appreciate that. You're, making your point in reference to the gentleman. I asked him a question or two, and then, he left, and I was satisfied because he said, I asked him for numbers roughly, and he gave me the numbers, and then I think he saw where I was going, and so he said, okay, that's it, right? And that is sometimes how, you got to put things into perspective. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Webbo. Good night to the panel.
good night.
Yeah, I call him before. I mean, I guess that way you're talking about just now. I hear asking how much people he talk to. It is 100 people. Nevis getting 15,000 people, am I right? So how he come to the conclusion that 100 people you talk to give the correct answer to company where you're talking them kind of foolishness there? So Nevis people ain't know what they want? And this constitution, I find every time the government, they have election and the government change, who go in talking about the constitution, who talking about the constitution, right? I want to sum it up with one thing, they ain't got no moral standard. They gave you no right. You right everything, I think you should do it. These politicians probably take people who fool that they come maybe fool and 3/4 of the years leading into election and try to can you with a lot of foolishness. And some of we voters, like we ain't got no common sense. We swallow hook, line and sinker with the foolishness that they come with every 4
1 and 3/4 before into election. People alone use their common sense and forget about this political sideline business. We going on the road and arguing, saying that Nevis saying I no call to ask for fair share. Government come, same foolishness. If Nevis is fighting for something, whoever get in, all they do, hope that we get what we're supposed to get, and then they try to pant up and that. And keep Nevis afloat. Not telling me that because you ain't back somebody, you see it wrong with what they try to fight for. We find that we need to like a sheep and we're very simple-minded. And once people ain't like you, they bring you down to the lowest degree, no matter if you try to fight to the right anything. But if a South Division continue to deal with their own, they're going to suffer for a long time. And for years since I small, this thing going on between St. Kitts and Nevis. This federation thing look like in our work. I got friends in St. Kitts the same way. And I know how some of them don't think at times. But if you say we are one federation, we're supposed to work together, not when it's convenient for you. You say all kind of manner evil about Nevis. But when you want power now, you run back up and say, oh, let me join, and we're going to make things better. You get into power, you like you worse than the devil. You just do what you feel like. Nobody could speak to you because you got whatever you say you have. Full power. But I don't think, with the Constitution thing, people don't really look at read the Constitution and realize the power that the Prime Minister got at times, you know. Then you go in and you say you didn't know. How many you didn't know? You're supposed to know. I guess these politicians take people for fool, and they're going to ever be riding pan way back till when we get a better mind and change stuff. Because we give them a job. But it seems as if voters forget it. And that's all I have to say for now.
All right, thank you. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, good night again, Robert. Good night, sir. Good night, now. Now, Robert, may I say that Nevis ain't developed, you know. I come to Nevis and I see like a development in Nevis because I've been Nevis all the time. I see like the things done. But the people, them, what they're telling me, that they see some things not that the premier of Nevis, they see, you know, the foreign investment coming in and this investment coming in. You understand? That is what I mean. Like foreign investment and go to look investment. We say that Nevis can develop a lot. When I come to Nevis, I feel to see certain things, I used to come to back long time back in the 80s and stuff, and back in the 90s and all them things there. And how Nevis look now, to now. You understand? I'm talking about the comparacy with the Premier Amari. They wasn't getting nothing from the CBI. And they were doing, Nevis was development under them still. They took that to take a loan because even, you know, with Mark Burnley, I asked him and all, and he told me that in the past, when Nevis used to do the CBI program, he told me that he had to take a loan from the bank. You understand? I'm talking about foreign investment, bringing investment and develop Nevis as the Premier Nevis. The federal government has done a lot, especially under this unity administration, and no one can counteract that, and no one can say that didn't happen, because even Mark Bentley said that. He said it's too much a presence under this unity administration and before. You understand? So I just want to wish the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis all the best. Wish the people all the best. People, let me tell you something. Stop, look and listen. If these people who will look as unity and they want to be united, we could be united somewhere else. NRP, we could unite somewhere else. CCM, we could unite somewhere else. PAM, we could unite somewhere else. Labour, we could unite somewhere else. PLP, we could unite somewhere else. All they want a good taking leader, a good caring leader to care about the country. Nobody is good, and nobody wants to power, and nobody wants to prime minister. Because it seems to me that is the situation right now. Brother, you all have a wonderful it because this Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and living with the all children and the outer world. We should have going on up here. So maybe we will not that debate program to depend on soon. We got to depend on how we farm crop we doing here. That is the face we got to depend on. You see the pandemic just the other day happened there for 2 years? Brother, let me put to God and just move this 20,000 years as black people. We move on as one. Brother, the God bless you, keep you.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. How are you all doing?
Good. Okay.
Caller, could you please? Hello? Okay, caller, we seem to have an issue. Could you call back? We'll appreciate it. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. I would like to say sympathy greetings to the families who are left to be mourned as my headmaster, Mr. Van Summary. And I wish them all the best as they go through the bereavement at this point in time. But I would like to say this too. We have to thank God for CCM, because if it never was for CCM, we would not be where we be today. And we must not be so much ungrateful, because ungrateful is not there. But anyway, God can't do too much and Jesus can't do too much. So we don't do to him. If we don't do to him, he went on the cross, Good Friday gone. You understand? So that can him stop one on earth. Just what happened in heaven, it just happening on earth. Jesus and God can't do no more. But then they're doing still. You understand? He sent everything for the just and for the unjust. Nobody leave out. But we have to stop being ungrateful. Because when before I leave from Nevis to come to station, when I go back up in Nevis, I surprised to see how Nevis is. And Nevis come a long way. And if it never was for CCM, it would not be in the Caribbean today. And we got to stop being ungrateful and look on the good things and not the bad things. Yeah? We have to give and take. Because carry them in India, and what they do? Nothing. So we still got to thank God for CCM, because if it never was for CCM, what would have happened to us? We'll still live in the darkness. But thank God CCM give us the light. And those who talking, they're still walking on the light. They're not in darkness anymore, they're still walking the light. And Miss you can't do no better. You understand? You could just do what you can do. And now you left the rest to God and Jesus. Because of that they're doing. You understand? Because God and Jesus can't please everybody. Because we can't stop them from killing him. You understand? So who is we? Who is we? So thank God for CCM. And who never had a house, got a house now because it's CCM. And then when they turn the key in the door, remember CCM. Remember CCM. And to call down CCM. When I was seeing, I can remember when I was seeing them, when brother come up, but thank God for this. When we had the administration building whole begin, brother leave from all the way in St. Kitts and come here to stop the whole from begin, so we to get our own passport. But after brother die, we could have get our foundation bill to get our own passport. You understand? All I was seeing go back there so. Brother send up the army man them to kill Ira Stephen. But Ira Stephen had to leave his house from Hamilton and his wife to go down there by the school, by his father and mother, and hide where his vehicle in his yard to protect himself and his wife from Brother army them. You understand?
Okay, caller.
But he come a long way.
Okay, I got you.
Amen.
Okay, amen. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening.
Yes.
Okay, wrong number.
Okay. This is Thought That Get Results. 1-869-469-1616 and or 1 10700. We'll be back after this.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results. Please call back. We're sorry about that. 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to everybody down the panel. Yeah, and the lady just said, right, I'm behind 100%. We need what's best for the country. I'm sorry we got to see this thing going this way. We never expect it to go the way. The girls hope they did 2015, so they want to be like the old government. And now it's a prize now it ending up like this, but we want what for Caesar give to Caesar, and that's all. And now what will happen? You see, they make the promise. I was up there when they're writing up and where they sign up and where, I didn't know, this thing was going to happen like that. The people that took you the word and take it back too much, Webbo, I don't like, what I see going on as a big woman. As a young girl, when I was younger, I couldn't situate, but now I see it, It's just not, you go there, you tell us on the podium, me ain't do what Tom do. Me ain't bank my money offshore at Tom, I mean bank it right in the country. Anything happen, and me, I could just go there for it. When you look with the Western Tom, you say I wasn't going in to do what Tom done, you do what some Tom. And about our health care again, in dilemma, we need better care, and they're supposed to be shame, car. And Greenland Park, they tell us all on the good health care, better health care, and people run with it. It was really in my head. But when you're this age, you ain't got to him go away. MRI gonna be good, this thing gonna be good, and now what's really going on. You got to put out. You see what happened? They make this manifesto. And they just feel like they could just put into some mama guy people. And it ain't working, so no more no call the TV alone educating you daily. You see what's going on and other things. And they got to done with them kind of foolishness now. Come with real hardcore. So people feel happy. The beginning project, Webbo, they ain't finishing them. And then we'll go boast and say, look I do this and look I do that. Do one. Unfinished, we got my patrol down here, can't done. Patrol and so. All of that, they say they're going to rectify, so I just hope and, I pray that they could get this thing. I don't know if they couldn't get it settled before it reached abroad. It's abroad, now it ain't funny. I think we shouldn't reach to that. They should have kept it on the cover, work out where they got to work out. And then, when we do hear about it, it don't mend back. Instead of the people like, we go wrong. Why election again? We just had election a year or four. Why election again this time around? I mean, them is big educated people. When Cambridge, when Oxford, they couldn't sit down there iron out this before they reach this far. Everybody power hungry, so. And some people, when you look at them, we're right now, you see too much of progress where they get all them, it can make you concerned where the money coming from. So one person, the progress and so high, and the lady just say, we ain't got nothing. Sorry, not the lady, I was just listening on another station, and he was saying, 103. Now they need to tell us about how you're going to live. Nobody else for you, You come in and the price too high. Nobody else say, well, okay. But back tomorrow, you're going to see it. If it was for 10, you're going to 8. Just like they don't care because they don't know how they just turn a blind eye hour. It's really people put them there, and I think they're supposed to care more better than this. Not just care for them and their family, they don't look good at all. And I just hope I'm so sorry you got to reach to this, but I know they just look too selfish. They're abusing on the other side their position. Oh, they're hungry this. But people don't understand. They're looking at the bigger picture. No? Yeah, sure, and they mega the thing, but when you're looking for you ain't getting no info, Mr. Webber, you're somebody working in the office. And you know, you just say a strange thing come there, you say, James, did you put that there? No. How we come in the office? Mary, you put that there? No. So you person around your own feel funny, they want info, how it thing get there. And that is the problem, that you don't want to work out. Just like I say, they say, Mr. Douglas, well, they come just like that, they ain't getting no information there, and they're going in cabinet there. And they make it look too bad. You hear, just hope and pray that things could work out. But with this little smaller, this back and forth, all because,
Okay.
friends and family, they ain't supposed to be man. They just tell us to lie, they make us feel so good and green and special. Now it's a different story.
All right. Okay. I got you. Thanks much. Well,
The fellow who called and said foreign investment, nothing happens before it's time. And you have to go out and attempt to lure people to our shores to invest. And people have been coming. It's just that most of the time when they come, they probably would wind up in some kits at the same time.
okay, let me get this. Hello, good evening. You got a half a minute.
Good evening. The only thing I have to say is that the only thing that can work here is total separation of the two islands. Nothing with St. Kitts and Nevis can work. Thank you.
All right, thanks much. Now you want
Yeah,
to
the question is about lesson learned from this, as Nevisians, we've been learning lessons, but this particular upheaval should teach us the most, in a sense, because it was the last straw, and the very last caller, I think it hit it on hit the nail on his head. I don't think it's going to be cool going forward. Being a part of the Federation, I have no hope that we would get our fair share, Webbo, going forward. It's about what we have learned from this as Nevisians, and we got to solve Nevis problem from right here in Nevis. It's truly about the unity of Nevis people, who people think it's impossible, but we're educated people anyway, so I suppose we can unite for the good of Nevis. I think that can happen. But a lot of people think it's easier to unite with somebody in St. Kitts. And we get hurt all the time when we do that.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. You have a half a minute.
Hello?
You have a half a minute. Could you go on?
Yeah, we want a separation. Webber, my grandma and father from up there, my grandmother from up there, my mother and father. So it was separation.
Okay, I got you.
Huh?
I got you.
We don't need that. We need to reunite. Unite is the right thing.
Unite.
The money.
That's the last word. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brandley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Map. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Taught and get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
Views and opinions expressed on the preceding program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers. With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.